Highlands. Her childhood home was a farmstead on the foothills of Mount Kenya.
We are six. We are 3 brothers and 3 sisters. And it is the sad. We live the normal Kikuyu lifestyle. That is looking after sheep and goats. One thing I remember about her is that she was very hardworking. If she was sent to fetch water or fetch firewood, she would come back quickly.
At a Catholic boarding school not far from her home, Wangari met her lifelong friend, Miriam Chege.
She seemed to understand the subject better than anybody else. And the most difficult subjects like biology, like math and algebra, she was very, very good. And she would help us really.
In 1960, Wangari and Miriam were chosen to be part of Airlift Africa, a scheme launched by Kenyan politician Tom Mboya and funded by the then U.S. President John F. Kennedy to enable bright young Kenyans to study in America.
The original Airlift for that group of students was about much more than just an education. For most of them, they had never left the country. Someone like Wangari Maathai had never left her village. I believe for Wangari, the experience must have given her a broader outlook, a sense of knowing where she had gone, a sense of a bigger role that she had to play beyond her immediate community, beyond her country even.
European, call them white people in our schools here during our time. So it was quite an experience, and we dealt with many, many questions, like do you live on trees? But we learned to be patient and to answer those questions, because in the process we considered ourselves ambassadors. My life changed. My experience changed. My thinking changed. When I left, I was a very different person. I had gone through the experience of the civil rights movement, which was led by Martin Luther King. And that experience really gave me my perception and my understanding and my challenge for human rights issues.
During Wangari's time in America, Kenya gained independence from Britain, and she returned in 1966 to a self-governing nation. Within a few years, she was married to Mwangi Maathai, who'd also been a student in America, and they soon had 3 children. By now, Wangari was studying and teaching at the University of Nairobi. Her closest friend there was Professor Vertestein Mbaya.
We were coming from different directions in the corridor, and she greeted me. She wanted to know, who are you? Because apparently I'm the first female she had seen in those corridors. And I introduced myself, and we shared, as we did for many years thereafter, and we became good friends. I'm a person who was born in the United States. Of course, I had a different socialization, I would call it, in terms of culture. And she also had a socialization that I felt was interesting.
In 1971, Wangari became the first woman from East or Central Africa to gain a PhD, and 5 years later, the first to chair a department at the university. The 1970s saw her becoming increasingly active and outspoken on issues affecting the environment and human rights. She founded the Green Belt movement and called on people to support it by planting trees.
Nobody would see anything wrong with you planting a simple tree. So planting that tree symbolizes nurturing democracy, nurturing good governance. Planting that tree symbolizes protection and conservation of forests, planting that tree also symbolizes the proper management of our natural resources as a country. So it was a simple act with profound meaning.
Yet at the very time the movement was gaining in strength, Wangari's marriage was falling apart.
Wangari herself was such an independent-minded person that I think that her independent mind perhaps may have made the children come to the conclusion that this may not work out too well the way couples do. When the divorce is finalized, of course, it was true certain responsibilities. You're now released from. So she had an opening to focus on issues that mattered to her.
Thank you.
station and Vladimir Site is the one who fought for this children. And if it was not happened,
way to say I love you, because there are so many other romantic expressions. No matter if you're a rookie
你好，我的中文语言
or a sophisticated learner,
我来北京5年了，我是本地人。
there is definitely something that will interest you. Check out Takeaway Chinese, a word that starts with 你好.
You're listening to CGTN Radio. Here. Experience the musical classics of the East. Mingle with the Music Talks. Witness the sound of antiquity and modernity. It's CGTN Radio. Here, the difference.
Now the news. Chinese President Xi Jinping has returned to Beijing after state visits to Tajikistan and Kazakhstan. He also attended this year's summit of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. President Xi said his meeting with President Emomali Rahman will guide the development of China and Tajikistan's comprehensive strategic cooperative partnership in the new era. Mehal Bazid has more about the Chinese president's visit to Tajikistan.
It was a really packed schedule with the beginning of a grand welcoming ceremony at the airport. That's where it began, but it was full of back-to-back events and great discussions, according to both leaders. This included a ceremony which Chinese President Xi Jinping awarded the Tajik president the Medal of Friendship, which he said was in recognition of the outstanding contribution that the Tajik president had for the relations, for the friendship of both countries. Now, the leaders also held really in-depth talks on regional issues, on international issues, as well as bilateral discussions, and they concluded with the signing ceremony of 29 documents. And these documents really had various fields. I'm going to give you some examples: trade, energy, education, and technology.
President Xi Jinping has urged all-out rescue and relief work after a dike breach occurred in central China's Hunan province on Friday afternoon. The breach was initially about 10 meters wide, but expanded to around 230 meters as of Saturday noon. Around 5,000 people were affected, all of whom have been safely evacuated. Hunan province has suffered the strongest rainfall this year since mid-June, breaking local historical records in some regions. About 500 million yuan, or over 69 million dollars, have been allocated to 9 flood-hit provinces and municipalities across China, including Hunan, for relief work. Chinese President Xi Jinping has sent a message to Masoud Pezeshkian congratulating him on election as President of Iran. The Chinese President said he will work with Pezeshkian to guide the deepening of the comprehensive strategic partnership between the two countries. Ethan Kanani has more about Iran's runoff presidential election.
According to the final vote count announced by Iran's Interior Minister, Masoud Pezeshkian garnered more than 16 million votes, while Jalili's total vote count was 13.5 million. In the first round of the presidential elections held on June 28th, the two rivals got the highest votes, but none of them could secure a majority. The turnout in the first round was slightly less than 40%, but in the runoff round, the turnout increased to nearly 50%. The 69-year-old Masoud Pezeshkian is a cardiologist, and he has been a member of the parliament for almost 20 years. He was also the health minister in President Rouhani's cabinet.
Keir Starmer is the new UK Prime Minister. He has appointed a ministerial team after his Labour Party's landslide general election victory amid 14 years of Conservative rule. In his first speech as Prime Minister, Starmer promised to restore trust in politics with a government of service. Beryl has weakened to a tropical storm after hitting Mexico as a Category 2 hurricane, causing material damage and no casualties. The storm, however, is expected to intensify as it moves towards northeastern Mexico and the U.S. state of Texas on Sunday. Beryl earlier tore through the Caribbean and coastal Venezuela, killing at least 9 people. 5 people have been confirmed dead after tornadoes struck the city of Heze in Shandong province. The tornadoes hit 2 counties of the eastern Chinese city, leaving over 80 people injured. Preliminary investigations show the disaster damaged more than 2,800 houses and over 4,000 hectares of crops. In sports tennis, defending champion Carlos Alcaraz has reached the last 16 at Wimbledon with a victory over Francis Tiafoe in 5 sets. This is the 10th time for the Spaniard to reach the last 16 of the Grand Slam. Top seed Jannik Sinner also entered the 4th round by beating Miami Tekmanovic. And that's it. I'm Kelly.
Heat is in proportion to the want of true knowledge.
British Prime Minister Keir Starmer vows to restore faith in government after his Labour Party's landslide victory. What does it mean for the country and beyond? Hello, I'm Arnold Blythe, and this It was an astounding defeat for Conservatives. Labour's win in the UK's parliamentary elections ended 14 years of Conservative government, securing 2/3 of the seats in the House of Commons. The landslide victory marked a huge turnaround for the party, 4.5 years after Keir Starmer took over as leader, and less than 5 since Jeremy Corbyn led them to its worst defeat since the 1930s. We begin with this report from CGTN's Michael Voss.
Large crowds gathered outside Buckingham Palace as the Labour Party leader Keir Starmer arrived for his meeting with King Charles for the constitutional handing over of political power. Then it was off to 10 Downing Street to give his first speech as Prime Minister. This was an historic victory for Labour, replacing a huge Conservative majority with an even larger one of their own, the biggest swing in history. I say to you directly, my government will serve you. Politics can be a force for good. We will show that. We've changed the Labour Party. We've turned it to service. And that is how we will govern. Country first, party second.
Earlier, it was a dejected, outgoing Prime Minister Rishi Sunak who made his final exit from number 10, announcing that he will also step down as the Conservative Party leader.
You have sent a clear signal that the government of the United Kingdom must change, and yours is the only judgment that matters. I have heard your anger, your disappointment, and I take responsibility for this loss.
Among the many high-profile Conservative losses was the former Prime Minister Liz Truss, who is now no longer an MP. The other big winners are the Liberal Democrats, who with more than 70 seats now have the largest number of MPs in the history. The newly formed right-wing populist Reform Party won a substantial share of the national vote, but only managed 4 MPs, including its leader, Nigel Farage. The Greens also achieved their highest ever representation, winning 4 seats. But the pro-independent Scottish Nationalist Party was a major loser, with Labour making substantial gains in Scotland. Overnight, there were aesthetic scenes at Keir Starmer's constituency as the size of the victory sunk in. He now has a very big mandate to govern, but given the state of the economy he inherits, it won't be an easy task.
there's much to talk about. Let's get to our panel. Klaus Lauritz is a history and international affairs professor with the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. David Tereshchuk is a veteran journalist and commentator. Also with us is Kevin Matthews. He's a history professor at George Mason University. And Wayne Fitzgerald is the leader of Britain's Peterborough City Council and chair of the Peterborough Conservative Association. Thanks, everyone, for being with us. Wayne, let me start with you. As we have been saying it, as the British media have been saying it, it was a landslide victory for the Labour Party in the United Kingdom. There were 4 seats declared. Labour has 412 seats, the Conservatives 121 seats. So, the question is, I mean, we knew before the election the polls were pointing to a defeat for the Conservatives, but did you expect it to be this big?
There were varying results being predicted with seats as low as 60 for the Conservative Party. So I'm pleasantly surprised on a personal basis that they remained over 20 as it is. But the fact is, I lost some very good colleagues by very slim numbers. In Peterborough here, we lost our sitting MP by 118 votes, which was predicted to be a Labour landslide of several thousand. And in my neighbouring constituency, again, less than 40 votes, we lost the North West Cambridgeshire MP. So that pattern, while I can relate to that locally, actually appeared all over the country. And there's only one party or one person to blame for that in terms of the votes went to Nigel Farage's referral. Now, there is an element of truth that apparently did shoot itself in the foot because those people voted reform because they'd lost their way with the Conservative Party.
And Wayne, I mean, in retrospect, how big a mistake was it for Prime Minister Rishi Sunak to call an early general election?
Well, from a personal point of view, having been an active campaigner for most of my adult life, I'd much rather be campaigning now in the sunshine rather than in the wind, rain and snow in November. So when he called it, it was always going to be the same. I think the path was set with the demise of Boris Johnson several years ago, and you've heard me talk about that before. That's where it started to go wrong with the internal divisions within the Conservative Party. So I don't think it would have mattered on end whether he called it now or whether he called it in November.
Okay, David, great to see you, David. The United Kingdom has faced tough times over the past 14 years of Conservative rule, Brexit being one of them, the sort of tone-deaf response to COVID being another, and the skyrocketing cost of living to the point where the government had to introduce food banks in the country. Through all of that, I mean, is it fair to say that as far as the voters were concerned, this was more a rejection of the Conservatives rather than a wholesome embrace of Labour?
I think almost certainly it was a rejection of Toryism. The British public have been used to 14 years of it now. And you could just say, just on a very simple basis, 14 years was enough. But it was 14 years that left Britain very much poorer than it was in 2010. You mentioned food banks. In 2010, I don't remember there being any around Britain, either in urban areas or rural areas. But last year saw 3 million food bank packages being handed out, doubling what it was the previous year. Overall, I mean, on economic terms, macroeconomics, the country's economic growth rate was 0.1% last year. And in human terms, the proportion of children living below the poverty line has been climbing fast, now accounting for more than a quarter of the nation's youth, amazingly. And that's a faster climb than any such increase over the past 30 years, back to the Thatcher years. And the watchword under the Conservatives was austerity, which they proudly vaunted as tough but essential medicine the country needed after the financial crisis of 2008. But it brought massive cuts in public spending with the inevitable results. And so no wonder the British public were as jaundiced and in the end so angry, as the Prime Minister himself said. He heard their anger. They were very angry, and there was no other way to go except to throw the bombs out, as they say in American politics.
Kevin Matthews, good to have you with us as well. Now, in one of his first acts as the new Prime Minister, Keir Starmer scrapped that very controversial plan by the Conservatives to deport those seeking asylum in the United Kingdom, and he was going to deport them to the Central African country of Rwanda. How is that going to be seen?
Almost immediately, Starmer said that he's not going to have anything to do with this policy.
The issue, though, is what do you do about immigration? And this isn't a problem just for the UK, it's an international problem. You can go the route that Australia has taken and have very strict restrictions, but I don't think that SAR can do anything without cooperating with Europe. And that's going to be his real challenge. He has already said that under this Labour government anyway, he will not talk about going back into the EU, back into the single market. And that's going to tie his hands because Brexit has really been a disaster for the British people. The British Chamber of Commerce said that something like 60% of its members have reported that they were having more trouble this year than even just last year with trading with the EU. So really has got to focus on domestic issues right now. The British people did not hand him a victory so much as they handed the Conservatives a historic defeat. Yeah. And for Starmer, I think it would be well for him to remember the past because in 1906, the same thing happened when the Liberals handed the Conservatives defeat on the same scale. And the historian George Dangerfield later wrote that it was a landslide by any measure, but it was one from which the Liberals never recovered. They never held office again, never won a victory again without the help of other parties. And given the volatility of the voters right now, not just in the UK, but in many parts of the world, Starmer can't count on succeeding or having a second victory unless he gets the first government right. Lance Lowry, I'm wondering to what extent the outcome of this British election is really an outlier. When we look at sort of current political trends in the rest of Europe, and we look at recent elections in Italy, in Germany, in the Netherlands, in France as well, there's been a shift to the right. But now, in the United Kingdom, we see a shift to the centre-left.
Yeah, overnight Britain has become almost an island of stability in Europe once again. You know, since Brexit, Britain wasn't really represented very much on the global scale. They had an awful lot to do with themselves, and everyone really ignored them on the international scale from a few areas. And now Starmer has found a newfound stability for Britain, and that gives Britain the unique opportunity to really play a much more important global role once again, as it has traditionally done. And regarding Europe, see a rapprochement with the European Union, not a rejoining of the European Union, which would be domestically, I think, still very, very difficult, but there will be a sectoral rapprochement with Europe. Starmer has been talking about an ambitious security pact he wants to conclude with the European Union. We also will see sectoral cooperation in the scientific area, in space collaboration, in the exchange of students and university exchanges. All that will help to bring Britain much closer to Europe than it has been since Brexit. And I think that will be good both for the UK and for the Europeans.
Wayne, what is your view on that? What kind of relationship do you see Britain under Starmer hoping to have with the European Union?
I don't accept that Britain has a bad relationship with the European Union. We have a trade relationship. And I also don't accept entirely that Britain has done badly since Brexit. Yes, there are problems. There will always be problems. But nobody expected a war. Nobody expected a pandemic. But Britain's trade figures in terms of exports are up. They're better than most of the G7 countries. That's my understanding of the economy, but it's all skewed at the moment. And I'd also say, yes, the growth rates are particularly slow, and they were better before than the last since 2010. I think about 4.25% in the last measurements that we've done. And it is much lower than the OBR forecast, but it will be the same under Starmer. And those relationships with Europe and trade, fine, I'm all for improvements, but he set out no plans on how he would do that.
Right. Klaus Lowry, what is your brief response to that the relationship with Europe has been not as bad as it's made out to be?
Well, under Sunak, fences were mended, and Sunak deserves quite a bit of credit for trying to have a rapprochement with Europe. Under Boris Johnson, relations with the European Union were outright hostile. They were hardly on speaking terms, and Boris Johnson was seen as an extremely difficult prime minister who was really quite incompetent and not up job. That changed under Sunak, and I would say that it will change even more under Starmer, because there's a lot of goodwill in Europe for Britain. And Britain, of course, has done important tasks in the recent past, like its very strong support for Ukraine, which is appreciated everywhere in the European Union.
Okay. David, there is one foreign policy issue which has generated a great deal of controversy and a great deal of anger, really, and that is the Labour leader's views on the Israeli onslaught on Gaza. Now, according to reports in both CNN and the London broadcaster RBC, Starmer said that Israel has the right to deny water and electricity to Palestinian civilians. In fact, Labour actually paid for this view during the election when we saw that Muslim voters, or at least voters in Muslim-majority constituencies, drifted away from Labour. Starmer said the quote was taken out of context, but, we know that the United Kingdom also supplies arms to Israel. It also helps Israel out with intelligence. Do you expect there to be any change in that policy?
Well, I think some missteps were made, certainly, in the course of the campaign. There was an attempt to walk back an unfortunate expression of what was intended to be, I think, only support for the right of Israel to defend itself, but it came out a lot worse than that. It was the idea of cutting off water to the Palestinians was a really politically stupid thing to say. And you're right, he paid for it. Just the Gaza issue itself lost them lots of votes, and not just amongst Muslim populations and Muslim communities in Labour constituencies, but much more broadly too. I think in terms of action moving forward, Starmer is said to be in favor of a two-state solution, as many politicians in the West are. But he's come under a lot of pressure to even go as far as to recognize Palestinian statehood early. Now, that's kind of uncertain, but I think the wind is blowing in a certain direction for the Labour Party when it comes to the Israel-Hamas war, and we should watch it very carefully and look for something that might, in the end, constitute considerable change.
Kevin, the United Kingdom likes to tout its, what it calls its special relationship with the United States. I mean, post-Brexit, it was hoped that there would be some big trade deal with the United States. I mean, is that something that the new Prime Minister is going to continue to push?
He probably will, but to Labour's credit, the new Foreign Secretary, David Lammy, has already reached out to both Republicans and Democrats in this country. But all is going to depend on the American elections in November. Now, if the Democrat, whether it's President Biden or an alternative, wins, I think Labour is going to have much smoother road. But if it's Donald Trump, everything will be transactional. And so all bets are off. David Lammy can have all the talks he wants with Republican operatives, but it will all come down to what Trump wants.
Klaus Loris, how do you see Starmer dealing with the United States? I mean, there's a likelihood, there's a possibility that Donald Trump could be back in the White House. How does that change things?
That will, of course, be difficult for any Western country if Donald Trump is back. But the UK will make a strenuous effort to be on the good side of the United States. Recently, relations have not been all that great. The trade deal, which was promised during the Brexit negotiations, never materialized with the United States. So there's room for improvement. But the United States will be happy to see a Britain back in international affairs, a stronger Britain, a more stable Britain, a Britain which is not just concerned with itself. And I think they will welcome Starmer's victory in order to see a more stable, more stronger Britain. Trump is a difficult president. He was very difficult for the Western world during his first term. If he comes back, the new Foreign Secretary, David Lammy, has a little bit of a problem on his hands because years ago he criticized Trump quite severely, and Trump is someone who hardly ever forgets insults and personal attacks on himself. And in the recent past, for example, during Lammy's recent visit to Washington, he scaled back any criticism of Trump and tried to make good and tried to say constructive things about Trump. So the British are well aware that if there is a new Trump administration, this will be difficult to deal with, and Trump has to be dealt with in a very cautious way.
Wayne, I want to get back to some of the domestic changes that we've seen after this election. And one of the things is something that you've already talked about, and that is the Reform Party in Britain and its leader, Nigel Farage. Nigel Farage, who tried 7 times to get into Parliament. 8th time lucky for him. He's going to be getting a seat in Parliament now. It's a right-wing populist party, that's how it's been described, and it got a significant chunk of votes during this election. But under Britain's first-past-the-post system, that only translates into 5 seats. And as you pointed out, it took away a significant number of votes from the Conservatives. What's the attraction with the Reform?
I don't know if you've ever met Nigel Farage, and I have several times. I've had a pipe with him, as we might say here, and he's a very engaging politician. And if you meet him, you get drawn into the Farage effect. So the public here in Britain have taken to Nigel Farage because he's a straight talker. He's a man in the pub that says it how it is. And that's what people like about him. I like Nigel Farage, and I like some of the things he says. But unfortunately, there is no depth to his policies. And that is the problem. And the main thing that Farage and the entourage bang on about, as was exposed in a Channel 4 TV interview recently, it is about immigration. It is about the policies of division. And the Conservatives have more depth than that. Now, whether or not he will go on to be an effective MP in Clacton, I don't know, because it's reported he's on a £1 million contract with GB News. Will he want to give all that up for an £80,000 salary? I don't know. But it's Farage that is the magnet, and without Farage, Reform were doing nothing. Well, we're dead in the water. But it's him that's pulled it around in the last 4 weeks. And that's why we're seeing swathes of votes, 10,000 in many constituencies, or 5,000 in the case of here. That 5,000 with our Tory vote would have seen our MPs elected. And that's up and down the country.
You know, as we saw in the introduction to the programme, Starmer will be what he calls a government of service on a mission of national renewal. Ordinary Britons are facing severe hardships, as we have been seeing. I mentioned the food banks, you mentioned it as well. Then, of course, there have been strikes, railway workers, teachers, healthcare workers went on strike, and the vaunted British public health system, known as the NHS, is under severe stress right now. Here is Keir Starmer talking about some of the challenges that he will face.
Changing a country is not like flicking a switch. The world is now a more volatile place. This will take a while. But have no doubt that the work of change begins immediately. Have no doubt that we will rebuild Britain with wealth created in every community.
So, David, what's on the agenda for the new Prime Minister? What are his priorities?
Well, a lot. Yes, indeed. And he also said that he would be representing a government of stability and moderation. Now, that's not a very exciting motto to go into work with. But in fact, it's going to, all the signs are that it's going to be what typifies their approach. This Labour Party, and now Labour government, is absolutely banking on growth. And not every Labour Party, certainly not various incarnations of the Labour Party we've known in recent years, is so committed to growth. This government will be. I'm convinced of that. And right from things like the mission for national renewal, which in practical terms will take the shape of a national wealth fund, that's going to be one of the first things that emanates from Downing Street, a combination of effort that is government-led, but that will involve the business community, and its main intention to encourage business investment, so that you end up, this is the theory at least, and this is what we're hoping for, is growth which will pay for the improvements in the National Health Service, which Britons are so proudly, traditionally so proud of, and indeed that's entirely deserved, and they can get back to being proud of it. But also the education service is in desperate need of improvement too, and money needs to be spent on that too. They're committed to probably new taxes that will amount to something like £7 billion in the coming years, and that's going to help them. But they're also going to have to borrow, unpleasant though that is, especially when they've been criticising the way that the Tories borrow. But as I say, this will all be done in careful and moderate ways, in which they hope that they will walk the line and get the improvement that they want without spending too much and putting the country into too much debt.
Kevin, just getting back to the point that David raised there about Starmer's looking for stability in government. I mean, given how tumultuous the last few years in British politics has been, I mean, there's been something like 5 prime ministers, one of whom, Liz Truss, only lasted 49 days. I mean, do you see a period of relative stability in politics in Britain? I mean, what will the British people be looking for now?
Well, I think what they'll be looking for most is to get the country back on its feet again. After not just Tory mismanagement the last few years, but since 2010 when David Cameron and his Chancellor Exchequer embarked on his pointless policy of austerity. They've just driven down the public services in the UK. Not just the NHS, but transport and a host of other things. And that's one of the problems about Brexit. I want people to get away from that. It's estimated that 4-6% of GDP has been lost, and it can be traced directly to Brexit. The British Treasury has £40 billion less to spend now that Starmer is in office. That's roughly $51 billion US dollars. So they've really got themselves in very bad spot right now, thanks to those earlier policies. And Gaza is important. It's estimated that the Labour lost 5 seats that they might have gained because independents fought on a pro-Gaza platform. Well, that's true. I think most British voters right now are more concerned with what is hitting them at home. And unless Starmer can find a magic pot of money somewhere, he's going to have to raise taxes. Well, part meeting will open him up to a lot of criticism from the right that he was a tax raiser all along. So he's really up against it.
Okay, and that is where we have to leave it. Thanks to all of you for being with us. That is it for this edition of The Heat. And I do in Washington.
Talking about in the most populous country in the world. What is it really like living in China? What does that have to do with you and the rest of the globe? Grab a seat at the round table and find out what's cracking from the hottest English discussion show coming straight out of China. Find us at Round Table China on your favorite podcast platform. We'll see you there.
The Beijing Hour. The Beijing Hour. IFN Hour brings you an hour of news and information from both China and the rest of the world. A mix of news, sports, and entertainment. In-depth analysis of the day's big stories, as well as the most comprehensive business of the day. The Beijing Hour. One only window to China and the rest of the world.
We all enter this world with universal greeting. We then learn to speak.
Bonjour, comment allez-vous?
Though our languages, cultures, and traditions may differ, we still share one thing in common. We have hope for humanity and the world.
Director of the 26th United Nations Climate.
Hear the difference with CGTN Radio. Join a global network to connect with the world.
CGTN Radio. Hear the difference. Sideline Story brings you all things sports related. The hottest topics, latest events, juiciest stories, all with a very personal take. Subscribe to Sideline Story Podcast for heated sports discussions covering events that are happening in China and around the world. The latest on the corporate front, all the market trends, expert opinion, and sound business advice. It is your unique window into the business world, direct from the heart of China.
Hello and welcome to Biz Today. I'm Jia Yang in Beijing. Coming up, we will have half an hour of business news and analysis. On today's show, China's manufacturing expansion hits a 3-year high, pointing to a steady recovery. And the UN General Assembly has adopted a resolution by China calling for stronger international cooperation on artificial intelligence. And now let's begin with our top story. China's private Caixin Manufacturing PMI survey, which covers smaller firms, reached a 3-year high of 51.8 in June. Analysts say this is pointing to a steady recovery of China's economy. Meanwhile, the official manufacturing PMI released by the National Bureau of Statistics remained at 49.5 in June. However, the sub-index for high-tech manufacturing was over 52, showing that high-end manufacturing expanded faster. So what's the current state of the Chinese economy? What are the signals behind the indicators? And what are new drivers for the economy as a whole? For more on this, join us on the line now, Professor Qu Qiang, Fellow of Belt and Road Research Center at Minzu University of China, Yan Liang, Professor of Economics, Willamette University, and also Dr. Zhou Mi, Senior Research Fellow with the Chinese Academy of International Trade and Economic Cooperation. So, Professor Qu, I will start with you. The official PMI from the National Bureau of Statistics actually focused on the larger state-owned enterprises, and the Caixin PMI actually reflecting smaller private firms, and that shows the factory activity expanded at its fastest pace since May 2021. So what does this tell us about the overall health of China's economy?
Well, the overall Chinese economy is steadily recovering, and especially the manufacturing sector is in expansion. And especially, in the manufacturing, we see the high-tech and machinery in the digitalization, urban transition, reoriented, manufacturing has been seeing its peak and have a really good momentum. And basically, we'll be seeing that there are divergence happening between the very large national economy as well as to the, small-sized high-tech companies. The reason for that are two. Number one is, I think, private sector was a supporter of the national policies are actually being shifting really quickly. And also we've been seeing many new technologies have been popping out, like AI, and also like, the next generation of the infotainment systems on the cars, as well as the electric motors research and development for the EVs are also taking progress. These are actually, always a strong suit for the small or high-tech companies. And also we'll be seeing in the international arena, most companies have a more flexible play and operation internationally. For example, they can shift their production lines to ASEAN nations, and also shift their research and development to certain other countries, so they can optimize their costs and benefit. And for the very large national companies, internationally we've been seeing the trade conflicts are still happening, and also there are many technology, sanctions or blocking downs are happening to them. So that, to some extent, has limited their play in the international market, and they are trying to adjust to that kind of a change, and that's the reality. So shifting gears need time, so they try to be stable in the first place and then seek more progress. And I think that explains most of the pictures in Chinese economy right now.
And Yan, so what do you see in terms of the resilience in China's high-tech manufacturing sector, and especially what are the more innovation-driven sectors of China's economy?
Right. So I agree with Professor Xu. I think China is undergoing this transition, and so there are definitely companies that are taking the lead, and there are companies that are yet to adapt to the new reality. And I think one of the biggest changes is the fostering of the new quality productive forces, and that is manifested in this high-tech pivot. So manufacturing in terms of, industrial output has been growing very strongly, and the high-tech manufacturing is even growing faster, especially when you look at manufacturing output, high-tech manufacturing output, high-tech exports, and also high-tech sector investments. All growing much faster than the general industry. And there are some definitely industries that are standing out, for example, like the EVs, like the batteries, and also solar panels, and also integrated circuits. Also the so-called low-altitude economy, and those are all growing spots of the current economy. So I think the trend has been now we have these leading sectors, they're employing high-tech. They're also
spurring a lot of investment. And some of these high-tech sectors are also general-purpose technologies. So they were going to, for example, the 5G network and also the AI technologies. All these technologies are going to be applied in a broader range of industries. And all these are going to help to promote the so-called total factor productivity. So I think this is really China's next growth sort of era, where this is driven by innovation and also by productivity growth.
So, yeah, you mentioned the low-altitude economy. So why does China list the low-altitude economy as one of the country's strategic emerging industries?
Right. So I think there are a couple of reasons. One is that the sector is definitely has a huge market potential. And second is China has the, I would say, first mover advantage. And third, I think is this sector is really very encompassing. It includes many different industries and also applications. So the so-called low-altitude economy it has already exceeded $69 billion value in 2023, which is 34% increase year to year. And this is going to expect to reach $2 trillion yuan market value by 2030, so 4 times from now. And as I mentioned, this encompasses a wide-ranging industry involving manned and also unmanned civil aviation vehicles. They're usually operating, under 1,000 meters, and therefore so-called low-altitude economy. And the activities include, passenger transport, cargo delivery, and many other operational tasks. And with this industry growing, this is also going to increase the high-tech manufacturing in the high hardware, like fixed-wing airplanes, drones, helicopters, and so on and so forth. And this economy is going to be large and reach about 20% of the entire automotive market size in the near future. And one very recent news, and that is very exciting, is the battery manufacturer CATL has just tested 4-ton electric plane, which is powered by ultra-high energy density battery. And this is going to continue to develop, and by 2028, they're going to put out a 8-ton electric plane, and that's going to fly over 1,200 to 1,800 miles. So as you can see, this is a very exciting new area that is going to be powered by high-tech innovation, and it has really wide range of applications and market value.
So, Dr. Zhou, so the latest economic figures show that China's economy continues to recover with the stable production, demand, employment, prices, and strong exports. So could you elaborate more on that?
Yes, it's a complete different set of factors that we are talking about the economy. We have to look at different aspects. Maybe in some countries that they are really good at economy, from manufacturing or agriculture. But for China, different ministries are trying to develop the different sectors in different ways. So if you are looking at the data, not only from the government investment, but also from the private consumption, that most of the stakeholders already have some confidence at the beginning that we talked about the PMI. It's about an attitude and also an expectation. I think the market really has the confidence that we can do more to improve the efficiency of using the resources and trying to extend our reach to a new area and some of the innovative ways to deal with the situation. So because of the different, the states and in different regions and provinces, I believe that investors are really having more confidence on the better using of these resources by making better use of the policies and also trying to involve more technology in the development. Well, when we're looking at the economy, for China, it's really a very big issue. We are talking about that in an open world that China has so many partners. So for the global supply chain, you can find that no matter for the import or exports, China has played a more and more important role in these connections, and many countries are really trying to have a better connection with China in different ways, and like for the traditional products and also to do with some of the new products. So actually, I think that many of these aspects are really giving more strength for China's economy to have a better performance.
And how do you see China's domestic consumption? What are the concerns and solutions regarding the consumers and their spending habits?
Yeah, first of all, I believe that the consumers' abilities are dependent on their income. That is one of the most important things. As we can find that after the manufacturing's recovery, that people are getting more salaries or income. They can be better, deal with their disposable income, and they can go somewhere if they have more time. While in the past several months, we observed that the tourism has increased a lot because of the holidays, because of some of these companies are changing their ways of doing business. So I traveled around in China, and I found that a lot of consumers are really trying to do more. Well, the second is about the possibilities. The government is providing more scenarios or policies trying to upgrade the household appliances and also a lot of the equipment in the government. So I think this is also a very important increase or encourage for the people to consume. And the suppliers of those equipment can benefit from that. And the third one is that the mode has been improved or innovated. So we are able to use more digital ways to deal with the connection between the demand and the supply, which is very important for us to improve the consumption abilities and trying to meet the different demand of the consumers.
And so the real estate sector is also quite important for China's economy. We are seeing positive developments are taking place in the property market with the decline or sales of new homes narrowing in the first 5 months. So what's your take on where we stand right now in the real estate market adjustments?
Right. So I think the real estate sector adjustment is necessary and it's needed, and it's basically prompted by the Three Red Line policies implemented in 2020. So we know that as China's population aging and also with the slowdown in urbanization, we cannot continue with the previous real estate investment-driven growth. Right, that sector has been highly leveraged and highly speculative. So we have to make the pivot away from investment in real estate sector to drive economic growth. And I think China is undergoing this process where now a lot of bank credits and a lot of investments are taking place outside of the real estate sector. And I think that's a good thing. So what government needs to do is to make sure that the slowdown in the real estate sector is going to have a contained financial risk, and also to find new growth momentum outside of the real estate sector. So if you think about this as the objective, I think China's economy is doing very well. The government policy has been really helping to stabilize the sector. Despite financial risk, the real estate sector adjustment has always been a very painful process when you look at the experience in the United States and also in Japan. They have undergone decades of very slow, steady growth, and I think China is able to avoid that by, again, pivoting away from the real estate sector and by new investment growth and also new growth spots outside of the real estate. So right now, what you're seeing is that the real estate sector continues to adjust. At the same time, the government has launched a slew of policies, for example, make sure that the houses that have started and have pre-sold will be finished, also providing necessary liquidity for some of the viable real estate developers. I think this is very important. And finally, the government has been setting up, the central bank relending programs of about $41 billion to purchase existing properties and use them for social housing. And I think this is a great policy. The one-stop two birds help to stabilize the real estate market, but also utilize existing properties for good social causes. So I think all these are, in good development, and I think this will help China stabilize the real estate sector and push forward the broader economy.
And so, Dr. Zhou, so the international organizations like IMF, like World Bank, and some market analysts have raised the forecast for China's economic growth. So why are they confident about, the future development? And are we going to see more overseas investment coming into China? And for investors, where is the new opportunity in China?
Yeah, I think that there are so many opportunities here in China, like for, what they can do to improve the integration of the different cities in the regions and trying to build a better integration, like for the Yangtze River Delta regions, and also for the Great Bay Area of Guangdong, Hankou, and Macau. So actually that there are so many integration factors to support the the better use of the resources. And what's more, I think that more investment can go to some of these, more potential areas, like in the digital areas with the big data and the cloud computing, that they are able to change the mode and pattern of the industries into a better and new one. So actually, that is the reason. One of the reasons I believe that the international organization has put some of the, more credit on China's economic prediction. So I think that for their modeling and they are based on the data and some of the indicators that the government are showing to them. While some of this information coming from the private sectors, from the enterprises. So they have some of the common understanding about Chinese economy because they see that Chinese government is really able to handle the challenges like for the real estate, for some of the debt issues, and we are able to try to open more fields for the investors. That is one of the reasons. And second is that China has good relation with our trading partners, and we are not trying to isolate ourselves or isolate some other country. We are trying to establish the better connections in the international governance issue, and that is definitely good for improve and increase of the international trade and investment.
So, Professor Chu, for investors, where do you think are new opportunities in China?
Well, I think for the investment in China, technology is definitely the area we would like to look into. Besides already, championed, they are already championed like lithium battery, like UV. And I think AI is definitely somewhere you should look into. Look, OpenAI and some other companies that have already faced a huge investment. If you want to go into that area, come on, you're already in the round C or round D. So the stakeholding is really very high. And the price is already very high. The valuation is skyrockets to the roof. But if you take a look at the Chinese players, we have a Cuban, we have a Tencent company, we have a Kimi, we have many of the big language models you have in China, and they are ranking in the whole world, ranks very, very high. And I think their evaluation and investment rounds are still in an early stage. So I think this is something you should look into. And also talking about the education, culture, consumption, tourism, this kind of the service sectors in China is just in the early stage. China just shifted gears, trying to evolve from the manufacturing dominated economy to a consumption and manufacturing and technology balance economy. So, which simply saying is shifting from middle-income country to a high-income country. So when these changes really happen, a nation, they usually will see service sector passing 50% of the GDP share. But China, take a look. Does China have its famous Disneyland? Does China have its famous comic or the anime or the movie sequel IPs? I don't think China has enough of them right now, like Disneyland, like Universal Studios. These kind of areas are really worth looking into. You're looking at 1.4 billion people. The market and with a rich cultural deposit featuring the Eastern Asia and Chinese civilization. So this is something I think is probably one of the richest cultural mines in the whole world. So this has also been needs to be looking into. And more than that, we have traditional areas that have been evolving really fast. For example, like the clothing and textile, and also like the new materials, like pharmaceutical industries. Those things are also evolving really fast. So, well, China is a country never lets off, imagining and opportunities.
Well, we're speaking with Professor Qu Qiang, Fellow of Belt and Road Research Center at Minzu University of China, Yan Liang, Professor of Economics at Willamette University, and also Dr. Zhou Mi, Senior Research Fellow with the Chinese Academy of International Trade and Economic Cooperation. And after a short break, we'll take a look at international cooperation on artificial intelligence. Stay with us. You're listening to Biz Today. I'm Zhao Yan in Beijing. The United Nations General Assembly has adopted a resolution by China calling for stronger international cooperation on artificial intelligence. China says it is essential that developing nations are not left behind given the rapid development of AI tech. For more on this, I earlier spoke with Andy Marks, Senior Research Fellow at the Center for China and Globalization. Thank you very much for joining us, Andy. So first of all, what's the current situation of the worldwide progress of AI development, do you think?
Well, that's a complex question to answer, Diane. Certainly, there's been enormous attention paid to generative AI over the last year or so. But we also have to recognize that in areas like image recognition, China has been the undisputed leader for a number of years. So I think overall, what most people would agree on is that whatever kind of AI we're talking about, we're certainly witnessing very, very rapid developments.
And how can we assure that developing countries can effectively enhance their AI technology and application capabilities? And how important is it to them?
Well, I think this is vitally important, not just for developing countries, but the world overall, because we have to recognize that there are still many, many billions of people around the world that have not yet been able to enjoy the benefits of advanced manufacturing, any of the other things that we associate with modern life in the developed world. And here, I want to compare artificial intelligence to electrification, and in particular, the light bulb. So if we go back, around time, maybe more than 100 years, what we saw was that with the introduction of the light bulb, people could work for longer hours. They could improve educational outcomes. They would improve productivity through every type of productive activity, farms, businesses, schools, hospitals, etc. And this, of course, powered industrial growth and raised the living standards and life expectancies for people all around the world. And I think that I see AI as very similar in this regard. And what made this possible, besides the technological breakthrough, was the role of governance and standards. So in particular, the establishment of regulatory bodies, implementation of uniform policies, quality and safety assurance, and then investment in infrastructure. And then finally, the ability to mass produce light bulbs. So I think that this is vital for artificial intelligence, and if we follow this checklist of steps, then I think most, if not all, developing countries around the world will benefit from artificial intelligence.
And when we talk about technology, of course, it shouldn't belong to just one company or one country. It should be beneficial to people all over the world. So how can we balance the interests and needs of business and governments and, between different countries to achieve the goal of equal participation and equal benefits for all?
Well, I think this is going to be an incredibly challenging and complex undertaking just because, quote-unquote, equality might be very hard to agree upon. But I think certainly there's a lot of room for progress in this area, and I think it has to start with making sure that everyone is represented. So at the global level, countries large or small, technologically advanced or not, all have a voice and have input. But I think also other stakeholders need to be involved as well. So I think this is the first step, which is why I think it's very encouraging to see the recent UN AI resolution that was initiated by China to focus on capacity building to specifically address these types of questions.
And some people say that the world is seeing a fragmented approach towards AI. So what do you make of that? And in order to avoid the fragmentation, what kind of cooperation should be done by the international communities?
Well, so here I would go back again to the comparison to the light bulb, in that without